Good evening and welcome to Just Saying episode 24. 24. We is our 24th iteration of this podcast, and the observant among us will see the regulars of the Bromeo and Falcon, but then also a very larger than life Friction. Hello, Friction.
Great to be here.
Excellent. We asked Friction very late to join us, and he was pretty cool about jumping in and saying, "Yeah, I'd like to be there." So, gentlemen, we got a bunch to talk about. Bromeo, and you can see on our topics there at the bottom is birthdays. We always end with birthdays, but since today is the Bromeo's birthday, we will open with that. So, Bromeo, a very happy birthday to you.
Do I get one of those like emotes?
Yes, you do. You got you got the party time goal explosion.
Man, I've been waiting for that. Like, achievement unlocked.
I guess the first order of business, gents, is we talk about the weekend and what went down and how it all happened. So I guess, well, let's start with our guest and Friction. Give us your sum up of how you felt about Birmingham Major Open number 3.
Yeah, I mean, the best word would be rough. Is really, really rough this weekend. We have a lot of hopes going into it, but the EU gents, they just played out of their minds, and we kind of just left disappointed.
I think that's a pretty good summation. And then how about you, Falcon? What are your immediate thoughts?
Do you want them now, Gravy?
Not all of them, just your summary thoughts.
I just feel like, I mean, the EU gents did play really well off of what I watched. I did watch the championship Sunday. Saw a bit of the results that happened between the other 2 days, or the other day, to Saturday. But I feel like our SSA teams could have done a hell of a lot better than what they did do. But that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it at for now.
Romeo?
Gabriel, you'll know this because we were on the desk together for the entirety of that weekend, and we were witnessing some good things, but also some bloody terrible things. And the only thing I'll say is what we saw from our teams this weekend just wasn't good enough.
Well, let's then go to the dreaded. Let's have a look at the bracket and how it all played out. There we see it. This was the top 8. We're not even going to go through the GSL, although I have to say there were some disappointments in GSL, which I might as well mention here. The main event that is up here. Highball not making top 8 was very, very rough. I really thought they would make it, but doing well against Cosmico, going 2-3, so they came really, really close. Death Cloud Esports, man, oh man, they started out so well. With their opening win against Bulletproof, I thought, okay, this is it. Death Cloud are going to make the top 8, but then going down in a close match to Labosh, and we saw how well Labosh played against Foot Esports, and they went down to Cosmico, but then who did Death Cloud lose to? Astronic. That was rough. Bromeo, I don't know if you saw that. Friction, I don't know what your thought on that. I thought Astronic were horrendous, and they should not have been a team Death Cloud lost to.
Yeah, I was also expecting Death Cloud to make a bit further than they did. It's a bit unfortunate.
Yeah. And then, well, speaking of unfortunate, let's talk about your team. You guys had the worst draw ever. I mean, going in your opening match against Hayworth Riz, and then in the lower bracket, Team Boney, which you cleared fairly quickly. But then you were either going to meet Limitless or Foot Esports. I mean, you guys really did have a cuck draw.
Yeah, I mean, we just try focus on the present. We try play each game. Don't really worry about the next game. But yeah, it was a pretty tough day, to be honest with you.
Mm.
It sucked to have to go through that on our last like regional of the split. Um, but yeah, yeah, pretty disappointed about that one. But what can you do?
Not a whole hell of a lot. And I see the dog man is still confused about how this all works. But in summary, dog man, on the Friday night of the main event, there are 2 groups, and in each group there are 8 teams. And in order to make it through to the main event playoffs, you have to win 2 series. If you win 2 series, you qualify. If you lose 2 series, you are eliminated. And through that, 8 teams are eliminated on Friday, and 8 teams go through to play this playoff bracket on Saturday and Sunday. That's pretty much the sum up of how it all works. And to answer your other question, there were 2 SSA teams. Of the 8 teams in the playoff bracket, only 2 were SSA, and that was Cosmico and Genesix. Limitless. What did I say? Cosmico and Genesix. Oh well, there we go. I was living an alternate timeline fantasy there for a moment. Limitless and Cosmico were the 2 SSA teams that made it through, and for the first time, Limitless. And I mean, I wasn't sure how that was going to pan out, Bromia, because normally Limitless are playing Saturday either from the they're playing in the upper bracket or in the lower quarters. But for the first time in the lower bracket, round 1, and there was a little bit of a worry of like, wow, how's this going to impact them and how they're going to perform out there?
No, look, it was a little bit sketchy, especially when Labosh started taking some games off them, a team that historically didn't challenge them. Position wise, they'd never faced each other up until this point, so it was a bit of a hit and miss. And Labosh definitely came out firing with Inspire, playing out of his absolute skin. That said, it was a game where we expected Limitless to do the work and put them away in convincing fashion. Something they did in the very next game against Hay with Riz. Hay with Riz knocked out Cosmico, right?
And
I'm
not only
correct, right?
that, they'd gone to game 7 twice
Yeah,
against
yeah.
Limitless. So it was proper opposition they were facing there.
Yeah, so Hay with Riz swept Cosmico. It wasn't even close, right? And now Limitless sweeps Hay with Riz wasn't even close. So there was a bit of a disparity in there. We were expecting 2 close games. We got neither. And Labosh pushing Limitless, Astronic taking a game off Limitless wasn't a very good portent for how it came in. We came up with a whole bunch of reasons why Limitless weren't possibly playing their best. But come down to the final game on Championship Sunday when Foot went up against Limitless, we were worried at the desk. We were, because Limitless, even though they've been historically finishing second, it's always been a tight affair somewhat. So the result when it came in was very hard to digest.
No, that was it was a very quick Championship Sunday, because it was a 4-0 sweep, a 4-2, a 4-0, a 4-0, and a 4-0, which did mean that all of us doing the broadcast got an early night. But yes, I think Friction's word summed it up nicely. It was rough. Now, that's the sum up at the end of the day. What this overall, for this entirety of the split, the SSA split had an SSA participation of around 40% throughout the 3 regionals. In the most recent one, it was at its lowest ever. I think around 40% started in quals, but by the time we got to the top 32, we were down at 30%. By the time we got to Friday night, we were at 30%. By the time we got to Saturday, we were firmly at 25%. The only bright light And no, and we can't call it bright. The only little bit of light in all of this is that in the 3 regionals, we never suffered the indignity of an EU versus EU final. It was always Limitless and Maestros, or Foot Esports as they are now, in the final. So in that regard, Limitless kind of being that last line of defense, which does then beg the question and maybe lead us on to the broader situation of how do we solve this? Notwithstanding, I mean, the argument about a 1/3 rule, a 2/3 rule rages on. And maybe that changes next season. We don't know. But we know this for sure. It's not going to change, at the very least, for the last split. So how do we address this? How do we become better than we are doing? And that's a very open-ended question, and I'm not sure where we even start.
I know where to start. If
Romeo,
you
wait.
humor me.
Romeo, wait. I want to say, let's let Friction maybe give his thoughts before maybe you go on your rant quick. What do you think?
Well, I think in the short term, there's not too much that we can do. I know that there are a lot of rosters that are splitting up. A lot of SSA rosters, I mean, that are splitting up after the split. So we'll have to see what new combinations we have, if anything, kind of works out better. But I mean, I don't think the second split will see much better results as a whole. We have to focus on the long term. And I believe we'll discuss that later in the podcast, but I'll just leave it at that for now.
Right.
All right.
Can I ask you a favor, GB? Can you pull up Snowy's tweet, please? All right. So my first point is that for our region to do any better, we need to stop making up excuses.
Mm.
And this right here is an excuse. Snowy says Epic Games is actively working to destroy our region. It is a shock they haven't removed it completely. I guess they prefer it to happen this way. But what he means happening is destroying this region as what they've set out to do, because obviously the world is against Snowy and we should have his back. Now, this is where our paths diverge. Snowy, and I'm talking to you and anybody who feels the same way that you do. Epic owes you nothing.
Mm.
Nothing at all. And it is a privilege to get to play in these leagues that potentially lead to Birmingham, right? A couple of years ago, we didn't have this.
Mm.
And so my thing is for anything to change, attitudes like this need to change. We need to get better.
Mm.
There is nothing more. There is nothing less. There's no room for cuck attitudes, because by playing the victim, by saying that this region is being destroyed, the only thing being destroyed in any of this is Snowy's paycheck. That is it.
Mm.
Nobody's losing anything because nobody was finishing much better before this. We had a couple of 2 top teams. We had a Bravado and a Limitless. We had a Pirates and a Bravado. But it was everybody else fighting for scraps. And now that Snowy isn't finishing top, it's a big problem. So I get it. And he is the most affected. So I understand his frustration. But make no mistake, Snowy's opinion is not the opinion of this region. It is one of the biggest gifts that we have ever been given.
Mm.
That we are now able to have a direct path to Worlds. Do we deserve to be there right now? No, we don't.
Mm.
Not even close. We lost in a sweep at home to guys who haven't even been training that hard.
Mm.
And now you're saying you deserve to fly all the way to Birmingham so we can watch you lose there too. No, come on.
And the only caveat, or the only is, it doesn't excuse some of the other issues we're going to be talking about, but I think that is absolutely a front and center point. I mean, the point in the tweet about it's a shock they haven't removed it completely. The shock was that they included us at all 4 years ago. That was the surprise. Nobody saw that coming. And given the state of Rocket League in this region, there was absolutely no reason to give us access to RLCS. We had the smallest player base in the world by some distance. It was tiny, tiny, tiny. So, and now we are part of it and have been every year since then. And by all indications, we will continue to have that opportunity. And while my frustration with this with this tweet was, and I think that most of the other people that retweeted it is representing SSA. That was what most of us took offense to, because regardless of anything we're saying, Foot Esports do not represent SSA. This roster does not represent. They don't represent me in any way, shape, or form. But it just, and the reason I get angry and frustrated at it is because of what you've just highlighted, is that we are, at this point, are unable to beat the teams that are coming here. I mean, EU third string, we have a long way to go. So those are the conversations we've got to have. And Friction, I know you brought it up in your tweets, and we're going to talk more about that, is how do we build ourselves up about as a region? And the first thing we have to accept is that there are people who want to build the region and there are people who don't. And there are a lot of EU teams that don't want to build the region. VK Salen and his roster couldn't give a shit. And there is no obligation on them. I'm not suggesting that they must care about the region or do anything to build the region. It would just be really, really nice. But then there are our own local players who don't really have a broader desire to build the community. And I guess what we are trying to do as a collective, myself, Bromeo, Falcon, and by all indications, Friction, from what he said today, there are people that want to build the region and make ourselves better. And those are the connections we want to make and go, okay, guys, how do we put our shoulder to the wheel and make it happen? Okay, well, then let me ask a question then. How do we, so where do we progress to from here? What's the next topic on this topic, if that makes any sense?
I can launch off here. Look, I've given a lot of stick in the last couple of minutes. I've provided a couple of clips. But that being said, there are clear, definable paths forward. And unfortunately, it doesn't include the current crop of players in the way we think it does. It has been shown to us that we lose against a bubble EU team. That much is plain, right? So if that is true, which it is, we got swept this weekend. What does that mean for our own development? It means that even if we were given a clear path to Worlds, it changes nothing in the current ecosphere. We cannot compete at that level. The current crop of players that we have do not make a dent in some of the EU or NA teams, or most of them at that level. So my whole deal in all of this is, how do we best utilize what we've been given? Because I have come, and this is, call it controversial, that I think that having all of these players here is a good thing. There are some negative things about it, but overall, I think it is good. It has progressed skill levels at light speed. It has shown up players who were coasting for years. And now it is showing us players who desire to be at the top. You have seen players putting in remarkable improvements in the last season. And I think if the import players, if foreign players continue to play here, we will naturally raise ourselves through sheer osmosis. A balance will be found eventually, and I think it will be at a faster rate than it would have been watching Limitless go to a major twice a year and get beaten.
Yeah, and now we're going to watch the same with Foot Esports. So yeah, I mean that, and that adds to it. Is it's not like we're being beaten by people that are going to go there and do a hell of a lot better. They might take one or two games more, but it just continues to highlight the problem. And something we've been saying for months and months and months is that We have too few people at the very top of the game. And the reason we have too few people at the top is that our broader base is not yet. We're not getting enough people into the game, and they're not providing a clear path for them to go from a casual player to low level competition, higher level competition. And, where there's a path that pushes them to RLCS. Right now you join the game, you find out by accident that there's a competitive scene, you get all excited and sign up for this RLCS thing, and then run into Hey with Riz or Limitless or whoever, and you go, well, this sucks, and that's the end of you, which is not a hell of a lot of fun. So maybe this is the point where we can segue into the point Friction brought up, Bromeo, unless there's something else we should. Go ahead, Sean.
I wanted to say randomly, I mean, as funny as it may sound, maybe the first step towards it is actually acceptance of the fact that we have these EU people here now. Our current players need to accept the fact that they're here now. They need to stop making these stupid ass excuses that, they've come to steal our spots and all that shit. We need to forget about the politics around this whole situation with, unfortunately, having a Spanish team now representing SSA. Sure, we can be mad about it, but that's not going to help us improve at this game in order to beat them eventually in the future at all. I mean, I was quite upset when I saw that tweet from Snowy.
Yeah.
And a few other like, what I was going to say a rude word, but the followers, should we say, that would support him on his decision and what he said and stuff like that. I was so upset, and then I actually went in. I didn't really get to watch the series live, but then when I went to go watch the series, and I watched Limitless look, were terrible. They looked like they were just throwing things at the wind and hoping for the best.
I think
And that's the top of our region. That is the top of our region. And they couldn't even construct a simple play together. Half their passes were just like, hopefully this connects with someone. I just don't know what I was watching from the Limitless side. And I'm no surprise that they got beat. And then they probably got so upset with themselves, they pretty much gave up in the last game of that series. I mean, what was the score? It was like 6-1 or some shit, almost a Brazil that happened in that last game of the series. So I was shocked. I just don't know what to say about that. And then I did eventually, after that, I went to go watch some NA RLCS. Sure, NA isn't regarded as like the top in the world. I suppose EU is regarded as the top in the world in terms of the Rocket League side at the moment. But the difference in the play styles is like insane. I mean, I watched the Genji series against is it the Ultimates in at NA in the final?
The semis. The Ultimates was the final. You're quite right. Yes.
Now the point I'm trying to get at is I was watching Genji and I was watching how they put things together and how they played so well together, and they bailed each other out when they needed help as teammates when things went south or not their way. How they put plays together, how they strung their passes together and all that kind of stuff. And what I'm trying to say is I've seen Limitless. I've watched them play many times. I've seen the capabilities of the players in Limitless and a couple other players that are inside some of the other teams in SSA here. And they are more than capable of doing the exact same thing. It's just none of them are, it's like they're not taking the right step forward in terms of how they should be playing the game.
But okay, so let's segue from this. I mean, I originally brought up the Snowy tweet just for one simple reason. It's that Snowy does a very good job at talking on behalf of a region when there are other people who disagree, myself being one of them. And I'm glad that we get to offer up our opinion. And if you're in the chat and you completely disagree, let us know. Sean's mod now, so he can mute you. But then, I'd love to get Friction's take on this next, because Friction actually, we put a tweet out asking for their opinions on what currently is going on, how to break it down, what happened, what we should expect, how do we fix this even. So Friction, with your permission, I'm just going to read through your tweet here, and then we can take it from there.
I'm trying to bring it up. I'm trying to bring it up on screen as well, because
It was in
hold on. It's
response
a reply
to
to yours, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
then give me a second. Let's go to that Bromeo.
That Bromeo, yeah.
Yeah.
No, so I think there were a
As
lot of good points that you raised. Let's just start there.
Thank you.
As I bring this up, I have to mention a great comeback, and it was taken from a screenshot, a screenshot from an in-game chat. Oh, I actually don't know if I should say this or not. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, we'll come back to that. I'll decide if I want to say it. I've got your screen up on screen. Your tweet
All
up
right.
on screen.
All right, so just I'm going to read from mine so
Yeah,
that
go
I
ahead.
don't have
Go
to worry
ahead.
about anything being cut off. But Friction said this. I asked the question, if you want to say something about our region, our representation at Birmingham, or our performance as a region, say it here. So Friction, this lovely man over here, says, we must shift our focus to long term. It is clear that Rocket League Esports will not make changes to region lock anytime soon. We are the 30% in our own region, top 8, 16, 32, etc. It's unacceptable that we must stop making excuses as to why we are not at least 80% represented. So that's the first talking point. There's a couple that we're going to go through. So Friction, just your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, so that should be our end goal, is to have at least 80% of the teams competing top 32, 16, top 8 is SSA teams. For the whole like RLCS, SSA, that's a bit more difficult because our player base just isn't that big. But for the teams to actually be competing in those spots, we should that should be our final goal and say, once we've reached that goal, project SSA is complete. We have our own, region that we actually dominate. Because at the moment, it's an absolute disgrace how teams from other regions, not only EU, there's also from MENA and stuff. They come here and they outnumber us, number one, and
Yep.
number two, on their own ping, 180 ping or whatever they play with, they are beating us, and that is just unacceptable. 1.5 years into this RLCS SSA project, and we are not putting up the numbers that we want. There has to be some kind of change.
Okay. 100% on that. So you continue to say, we must build up the pool of players who can compete at the highest level. The bigger the pools, the more high level teams and the higher percentage SSA teams will have in the top 32, etc. And that just follows on from your original point. So that's pretty self explanatory. Then you go on to say we must hold our veteran players accountable for their involvement in the broader SSA RL community. Easier said than done. However, how will new players improve if they don't play against the best of the best? Therefore, I plead with veteran players to involve themselves in six mans and RSC, and we must come up with other opportunities for them to critically interact with rising players. So, when you said critically interact, what did you mean by that?
I specifically mean get into coaching sessions, get into coaching analysis, replay reviews, and teach these guys the proper game sense. How, because this is a point that I made later, but I'm going to bring it up here.
He's looking at the photo.
Is the best way to acquire knowledge in this game is to hear it through word and representation. The long method is what the veterans I refer to have been doing from the start of flippin' 2019, when the scene kind of started. The only thing that we could do was by trial and error, by analyzing our own gameplay. We didn't really have much help back then from coaches overseas, and definitely not EU players and stuff. It was all by ourselves. So now it took us fucking 6 years to accumulate all that knowledge, right? Now, what are we gonna do with it? Are we just gonna, sit with it because we're too egotistical to actually, pass it on to lower level players, to rising stars? Or are we just gonna retire with it, and that's 5-6 years worth of knowledge and gameplay just down the drain, just like that? So, my point is, this is why coaching is so good, is because, and this is why pro replay reviews and analysis of pro games is so good, is because through you can look at how they play and you can analyze it and you can see, okay, well, this is, why do they do this, why do they do that, and you can learn from that. And that's actually like very fucking overpowered, because it took them a lot of time and a lot of resources to learn all of that, and they're giving it to us basically for free. Like, we just need to analyze it, we just need a coach or someone knowledgeable to just sit in with us and just learn from them, right? But the uprising players, they can't do it by themselves. We need these veteran players to actually say, listen, let me actually be of use to the region, let me put my ego aside. This actually like triggers me so much. It's bullshit how we have veteran players who say, oh no, I don't want to queue six mans, or I don't want to play RSC because I'm going to play with lower level players. Like, you say bullshit like that, and then you go and say, oh, our region is so like ass, and there's not enough SSA teams who's competing, and then we blame it on RLCS and the rules and EU players and stuff. So that's what I'm saying. We need to stop making these bullshit excuses. We need to hold ourselves accountable for this. What you tell me? Okay, I agree. We did improve in the past 1.5 years since the EU teams started competing here. But did we improve enough? I don't know. I think it could be argued that we could have improved a bit more. But nonetheless, we can't really change that. We just have to look forward. And, like you asked earlier, short term, I don't see a whole lot that we can do, to be honest with you. You've just seen what 1.5 years of EU teams here have done to improve us. You saw that on Sunday, Championship Sunday. Limitless, our best team, got fucking swept. I think the last game they lost like 6-1, right?
Yeah, it wasn't even close. We were worried about a Brazil.
Yeah. So it's absolute bullshit that we have to put up with 1.5 years into this project, and this is what we can say as the team that's representing SSA. This is the best that we can put forward. It's a disgrace.
All right, so I completely 100% agree with everything you just said. And just to continue along your tweet, and this is a suggestion to fix it. You said, a suggestion of mine is to organize a league for lower level players, kind of like RSC. However, each team must be critically and thoroughly coached by a high level overseas coach or veteran player, which I think is brilliant. There needs to be a skill transfer of something, because I agree with you in the fact that we have had games to analyze now for going on a season and a half, and we've got nothing to show for it. We're nowhere closer to cracking the European code. And if it was only just simply a skill ceiling or a reaction time, we would have adjusted to it by now. At this point, that is copium. Our teams are just not doing enough homework to beat the teams in front of them, because clearly we're at a disadvantage. Whether we say they are better than us, then how do you beat the team that is better than you? You play to their weaknesses. What are those weaknesses? We need to be seeing results that aren't as conclusive as the last game yesterday on Championship Sunday, because I've always rooted for Limitless. My prediction went to Limitless, even though I have never gotten that prediction right, because I want to support an SSA team naturally. But
Yeah,
but when your team plays like that, there's not too much that you can do to defend it. And I think there's just been a lack of accountability when it comes to it. It's always somebody else's fault. It's always, the Spanish team that's come in, it's their fault. No, it's not. We're just not good enough.
Somebody mentioned the idea of acceptance, and I think we are. I say slowly getting there. This is our life now. They're here, and the choices are simple. Is if it's too hard and too frustrating and too upsetting, then you don't have to play. I completely understand that. And we have Snoozy as an example. He quit. He had a bit of a meme team playing in the qualifiers. I'm not even sure if they made day 2 or not, but he made that choice. It was like, I don't want to have to deal with this shit, so he left. The ones that are here, we have to fight. The ones that are sticking, we have to fight. And the thing about coaches, and I've seen Revoke has just offered in chat to say, is there a team he can coach? Are there people? And there are people who have offered that. And I think and I've done what I can to try and connect up people who say, oh, I'd love to coach or whatever, and try and connect them with a team or players. And in some cases I've succeeded, in others I haven't. There is that willingness. And again, it has to be said that, there are EU players with whom I am incredibly frustrated, who I no longer engage and will barely even acknowledge because they're not good people about what they do. But there are so many good people who have more of an interest in building this region than some of our own players, which blows my mind. So the point I'm trying to make here is there is that offer of help. What Friction has just said there, high-level coaches, players, they are there. They want to help. They would be thrilled to impart their knowledge to us. But we also have to be willing to go, you know what? I'm a good player in this region, which means I'm cuck in the world. I could be better.
Definitely.
No, I completely agree. And this comes to another point, is like, if all you ever wanted was to be the best in SSA, there are competitions for that. You can go and play in VS and win and be the big boy. That's, if that's what you want is glory in a local setting, VS exists. But what if what you want is money? And I'm pretty sure that's all it is you want to get paid for your efforts. But currently there is somebody who is not of your nationality occupying that space. That is tough. Because that position is not owed to you. It is owed to the best team in that position. And currently it's not occupied by you. So what are you going to do to take it back? And complaining about it isn't it. And there's been some good suggestions, but currently the biggest problem that we face is that we do not have a player base sufficient to compete with the likes of that of Europe, and we probably never will. But one thing I do know for certain is that we do have a player base. It's just not a community active player base. We look at what's happening in high schools, even if you just, search ranked, Q ranked, these players exist. They're just not grinding the same way as the 20 or 30 players who regularly compete in RLCS. And that for me is also a big thing, is like I can practically name off, my hand the amount of players who can actually technically compete at that level. And it's a group of 20 to 30 players at most. And for that to be an actual number is ridiculous. The fact that we want to compete with the French giants and we want to compete against much more established nations with 20 to 30 players, I think, one, that's a bit ridiculous. Two, I think it's very short-sighted and narrow-minded. And three, to say that I am the best of these 20 to 30 players, therefore I should represent my country and, get absolutely stomped by whoever we're lined up against, I think that is just wrong.
And then still not improve off of that experience where
Yeah.
they got split at these majors or lands. And how many majors or lands have these specific players gone to? And they've done nothing to show for it afterwards.
Yeah, I'll say this, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. I will have more joy hate watching Foot get stomped at RLCS Birmingham than I would watching Limitless go through. And I'll say that this point because when Limitless was going, they were like, maybe they can win a game, maybe they can take a series. That was our biggest goal. And I think that's a very juvenile goal. And I think we need to be the best in our own region. We need to be legitimate contenders. And in order to do that, it's a lot more work than simply, stomping a couple of local teams.
Which segues back to Friction's first point, which he said here about getting 80% of the signups or the players participating being from SSA. there were around 100, call it 100 teams signing up for each of the regionals. 40% of those were SSA. So 40 teams. Let's say each of those teams has a roster and a sub, 4 people. So that's 160 players. We're having this passionate, heated conversation about 160 people. Where is everybody else? To Friction's point, if 80% of the signups are going to be from SSA, we need another 200 minimum players who can compete at somewhere in and around near, who can make a top 48, something. And that's what we don't have. And he makes the point there in his point number 5. There must be more highly rated local tournaments to participate in. In general, this is only a good thing for the region to have. At the moment, we've only got BS Gaming. There's not a lot going on. And that brings us to the broader I think was it Flosi you said, Bromeo, who made the point about events?
Yeah, it was.
So there
Flosi made a good point. This is news.
Flossie made a fantastic point. Events. We've got to reach, that sweaty tryhard in Champ 1 who doesn't even know that there's a proper competitive scene, but there isn't a competitive scene for him. Because he's Champ 1. Where's he going to go? RLCS? That's awful. That's no path to development. So and that's something myself, Bromeo, Falcon, and a few others in the community are talking about, is how do we create more of, and there are some ideas, some plans, and hopefully they come to fruition. There's a lot of passion, not enough resources and money to match the passion, but we hopefully will get there, because if we don't address that, it frustrates me no end that it is still snowy to die for, sweaty, who are being that last line of defense, and never mind our frustrations with them, and they are many. Where are the young crop? I mean, we're waiting. I'm looking eagerly at Highball under the stewardship of Skillsteel with Ravi and Devour. But we need 40 Ravi and Devours all being guided and pushed in that direction. But none of them have yet made that jump. I mean, the local players aren't even beating Limitless yet. So as much as we're talking about the frustration with Limitless, our local guys aren't even yet beating Limitless. So there's a lot to fix all around, and this isn't. And I think we got to be very cautious of just taking one giant dump on the entire scene. And as
why can't we take a big giant dump on our scene right now? I mean, it is in the shit.
No.
Why must we say nice things?
No, but it is a huge juxtaposition, Bromeo, because yes, we're in shit at the very top professional level, but at the same time, we have more opportunity in Rocket League than any other esport title in this entire region, bar none. We have there's a higher prize pool in it. There is a very clear path from being, to getting to a LAN. Speak to the Call of Duty guys. Those guys are hanging on, they're sniffing a copium rag, keeping themselves going as a community. We've actually got something we can aspire to, and we should be enormously pleased with that and take advantage of it. So yes, while we're pointing out all the glaring things that are wrong, at the same time, man, we're in probably better shape than any other esport title in the country.
Yeah, completely agree. And I mean, I think I think Friction's favorite word in his monologue was bullshit, and there is a lot of it. There's too many egos. There's too many people who think their opinion is important.
Yeah,
and ultimately, this region is only going to get improved by people who are willing to work for more than themselves. And 2, people who are willing to work hard for things that won't immediately benefit them.
Mm.
And, we've seen too many players jump ship at the moment. The waters get a bit choppy. And, we had our eyes on like Guns because he's the next rising star, but he can't stay in a team for more than a split. So we have so many issues we need to resolve. And we have so many issues that we need to fix before we tackle the problem of making a dent at Worlds.
Mm.
We need to first have a couple of teams who can topple Limitless on on any given weekend.
Mm.
They're at the top because they've got the best players, sure.
Mm.
But how, I raised a stat, I think it was in, Birmingham 2, that the last time Limitless lost a game against an SSA team was against French class more than almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely ridiculous. Sweaty was on that French class roster.
Mm.
And yeah,
Yeah.
Werty, Wilu, and Sweaty, they were the team that beat Limitless at the time. And that was 2 years ago. And it's very easy to say, no, this was Team Mobula's fault. No, we can't even beat our own local team. So why are we talking about them? Why are we
Mm.
making it about them?
Mm. And again, nobody has to be doing this. Yeah, this this is a video game, and we participate in it because we love it. There's opportunity. There's some great things we can do, and to cycle back to your opening point, Bromeo, we are owed nothing. We should be grateful for what we have. Friction, are you seriously putting up your hand?
Yeah, I'd just like to jump in there.
Man wants to raise a point here.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Go, Friction.
There's a
Lights
friction.
friction.
Remember? Yeah, look, guys, we have to be honest with ourselves. SSA, we're like on our own. No one's gonna come rescue us. We have to do it all by ourselves. Before this tweet or this thread of tweets that I posted, I was going on a rampage yesterday on Twitter regarding EU teams scrimming SSA teams. It is pretty mixed. I actually don't know what the truth is. One side, Limitless, is saying no, they're not getting any scrims. The other side, VK Science team, they're saying yeah, no, we're scrimming a lot. The general consensus that I'm getting is, although the EU, I'm talking now mainly about Hey with Riz and Foot Esports, is that they do scrim, but they don't scrim enough. They say they can only scrim on weekends, and they've only scrimmed 3 times this entire split. So we can forget about them. They're not here to rescue us. And they're not entitled to help us. To be honest with you,
not their job.
It's not their job at all. I mean, we, like you said, Drabiad, we have had people from other regions who come here and do want to put in more work and effort than our own people want to, right? And thank you so much to those people. Your efforts are really appreciated. But besides them, it's like we have to do the work ourselves. So now we can't be blaming other people saying, "Oh, but they don't scrim enough."
But
with
I've
us."
just got a question for this. So sorry for jumping in.
No worries.
We say that Foot Esports is not scrimming Limitless or whatever, but how many teams are scrimming Limitless?
Or how many teams are Limitless scrimming?
Yeah.
Look, I'm not 100% sure. From my personal experience, I have with Genesix, we've had generally consistent scrims with them at least once a week. That's not great. That's not fantastic, right? But it is better than the EU teams. I definitely get that point. Limitless need to also try and scrim with the SSA teams a lot more. Even not, you have to go beyond just I'm only doing it for my own benefit. You have to be doing it for the benefit of your region. And I think that's where a lot of the issues lie, is how far are you willing to go to help out, not just for personal gain for just your own team. I don't want to scrim a lower level team because that won't help me out. That's not the right mentality that we need to have. And this is not just Limitless. I'm not preaching to the top 8 SSA teams. Let's just give a broad area like that. We need to try be scrimming each other consistently, and teams below us as well. Even if it doesn't benefit us, it'll benefit other teams. That's how we get out of this. And then secondly, like I mentioned earlier, we need to try encourage more dialogue between high level veteran players and the rising stars. Hybo is a perfect example. I think it's great that Skill Steel is playing with Ravi and Devour because he can mentor them. He can help them to get to the next level because he's a veteran without a doubt, right? He's been with us since day one. He's a very good player. He's very experienced. He knows the ins and outs of this game. So what is he doing? He's passing his knowledge on to Ravi and Devour. So then they can actually go a skill ceiling higher than he has. Because what did he have to do? Well, he had to go from ground zero, learn all of this by himself. And Ravi and Devour, they're getting this knowledge free, just like that, from Skill Steel, right? And we need to encourage more of that.
You know, funny enough, talking about talking about the whole scrim situation, but before we had our whole EU takeover and stuff, right? When it was just SSA teams and RLCS in our region. Limitless, or if I can't remember if they were Pirates XD back then, but they were scrimming international teams already. So this whole thing about scrimming, let's say, the current EU teams in the region here is it's like a bit bullshit at this point in time to me, because they were scrimming other, I would assume, higher level teams so that they can improve that were international teams. And now they're throwing their toys out the cot because the teams that are here, and now they're claiming that they don't want to scrim and all that kind of shit. So I don't know what's going on here.
Well, there's multiple versions of what's going on there, and somewhere in the middle lies the truth. Bottom line, some people are scrimming, some aren't. Some want to make something great, others don't give a shit. It's kind of and I made a policy decision myself not to get involved in the minutiae of it and who said what and who promised this. Well, we said we would scrim and then they didn't show up, and honestly, that's going to drive me nuts. Let's drive this whole thing forward, and hopefully that starts to work out in the wash. But grab people who do help the region, who do help the scene, and make sure they get the props, make sure that they get whatever support they need to continue helping us. And on that note, I do want to mention another tweet from Friction yesterday where he thanked a bunch of people, and I think it's worth just shouting out these people. And he said there, thank you to Kexi, Valid, Jaguar Resist, LDC, Six, Inspire, Astronic Esports, Anyilo, Berachu, Ball Eater, Mirror, Abulba, Ramsey, Rixie, Celestial Vanguard, Star, Hunter, Mass for scrimming SSA teams and helping to improve the region. And then also Drew Moment, Mega Boom, Green Warrior. And there are others that weren't mentioned there, but these are names I'm becoming familiar with because they are around, they DM me, there is deep interest in helping. So Friction, first of all, thank you for highlighting that, and thank you to those names you've mentioned and others that we haven't, and hopefully we'll get to before the end of the night or sometime
I'd like
soon.
to jump in there.
Go
The reason
ahead.
why I mentioned these people is because for the past year they've consistently, on a consistent basis, have been helping out SSA teams. The ones who haven't been mentioned there, look, I'm not perfect. Maybe I have missed one or two, but for the most part, they're there. If you haven't been mentioned there, that's because you're not like sort of doing enough to help out the region. You're just sort of like treating it like receipts. Like, oh well, yeah, I did like 2 or 3 scrims with you guys. Guys, 2 or 3 scrims isn't gonna help the entire region to improve as a whole. So yeah, thank you to these guys. Massive shout out to them. They're my brothers.
Nice one. Friction, I know you've got a time issue. How are you on time? Have you got a bounce?
Yeah, I've got 5 minutes. So if you have like anything else I need to say, then
okay, well then
be the time.
let's wrap it up with Friction then, so he can go and do what he's got to do. Is there anything else we want to go over with Friction before we let him go?
No, so I'll just pose an open-ended question. We've said a lot of bullshit here on the stream tonight, and you've got the microphone for at least another 5 minutes. What do you want to say?
Bullshit.
No, I'm joking. Yeah, I think that one thing that we haven't mentioned is the or actually that I want to emphasize more, is we need to try drive community like events more. So like RSC is a perfect example. It blends low level players and high level players in the same team. And yeah, I would like actually challenge veteran players to please get themselves more involved with RSC and six man. Six man's is it's been dead. There's nothing happening there. Besides that, I have a suggestion, and this is just an open-ended suggestion. I don't know the details, but you know, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to have something similar to RSC, some kind of community league, where what actually happens is only like low level players sign up generally, but then you will get consistent coaching from, veteran players. I think that's like a very direct way of having dialogue between, high level players and low level players to pass on previously learned game sense and skill.
Okay. Well, Friction, it's been a singular delight to have you on this podcast. Bromeo suggested it early. He says, "Why don't we get Friction on?" And I said, "You know what? I've never had Friction on, and I don't know what sort of guest he'll be, and it might be a rough topic." And he's like, "No, let's do it." So I asked Friction. He jumped in, and it's been fantastic. Friction, well done. It's been an absolute pleasure having you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me on here. It's been an honor, truly.
And it looked like you resonated with a number of people in chat, so well done. All right,
Thank
cool,
you so
man.
much, guys.
No worries. We'll get you back again sometime soon. Thanks, Friction.
Gladly. Okay. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Well, that was pretty Friction telling it like it are.
Man, I love that guy.
Absolutely, that was brilliant. Okay, so you'll see on my list of topics, I have a topic there that says EU slackers, and the only reason I wanted to mention it is because for GSL on Friday night we had Cristobal Colon, who didn't show up. They forfeited, and then and 77 Blocks forfeited their first series on Friday night, and then on Saturday. I think it was Mira from Ball Eater who fell asleep, took a nap, and missed their lower bracket quarterfinal, so they were DQ'd. And
Can
you know what?
Imagine?
Can you imagine? And my frustration with that is that in the history of SSA Rocket League, the only time SSA teams have DQ'd has been for one of two reasons. Either there's load shedding in SSA and players literally don't have any fucking power, or there's a cyclone ravaging Reunion Island and they all have to hunker down so they don't get swept up and sucked out to sea. Yet EU players who are coming here and booting our local players out of positions and then napping too hard is a little frustrating. So if you're playing here, do better, show up for your games, be professionals.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's something I can get behind. And as Friction would say, it's bullshit. And I want that to trend on Twitter later. Friction says bullshit, because honestly, it is. We have a lot of players in SSA who take this very seriously. And to be outed by a better player who decided to take a nap on main event, because that's what you do to prep for a defining game. That's so disrespectful.
Mm.
And some of these Rocket League players really need their beauty sleep, eh?
Yep, they do. They do. And I just think that, come to our region, play with us, but don't disrespect us like that. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, there you go. That's all we're going to say on there. There are a number of tweets to go over, but I see we've got grassroots next, and I don't know if we want to address that now. We kind of touched on it with Friction here. I think we've covered that adequately for now, unless I've missed anything. Falcon Bromeo.
Well, look, we can just briefly touch on it
Uh,
again because it was a
skill
nice way
skills.
to. Yeah,
Skill still
it was
what?
just.
Skill skills question.
Oh yes,
Remember?
Oh,
skill
yeah, yeah,
skills
yeah, yeah, yeah.
question. Yes. So before we move on to
Okay,
grassroots,
so I'll move back to open number 3, autopsy.
yeah, let's cover that because it was a very valid point. And chat, please jump in here because this is going to be a whole lot of speculation now, and none of us are going to be anywhere near accurate in how we tackle it. GB, do you have the tweet up, or must I
Yes,
continue
no,
to
no, 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 no,
waffle?
no. I do have it. I just have to find it. Hold on. Which tweet are we talking about?
Skill steal. Oh no, it wasn't a
No, no,
tweet. It was a Discord message.
that was a Discord message. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm also going to pull it up so I can read it.
Well, okay. So the question was this. The opening question was: will this be the last season of the Limitless roster as it is?
Yep.
Who are we asking that question?
Is...
That is the question. So here was my thought on that: is that I don't think so. I don't know that Snowy can stand another season of this. Maybe he can. I don't know. I think he might even have been talked out of retirement to play this season. But I had a thought of, and actually, no, I did put it on Twitter, is that what if, for the sake of preserving the world spot for SSA, Limitless brings on a banger EU player? I don't know how we answer the next question of who goes, but
I think we know who goes.
No.
And it's not as obvious as you might say, because you all say, yeah, sure, Snowy can go. And as frustrating as Snowy has been and can be, there is no doubt that he has every team he has been on it has been the best at anything that's happened locally. So he has something to offer there, and he's clearly been working on his game. I mean, Bromeo, we've noticed a change in his roles.
Yeah, he's been playing really well.
No, for sure. I'm not denying his ability to play very well, or the fact that he's been on every successful team in SSA to date, pretty much, right?
Yes.
I'm more thinking the fact that he's going to not allow an EU player onto his team.
No, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, look,
this man is going to gatekeep, as he's been gatekeeping for who knows how many years he's been doing it. Protect himself.
I think Snowy will, rather play with his socks literally on fire before he brings an EU player into his team. And I say that he sticks to his word and his dogma and how he feels about it. So, back to the original point. I do think that this is the last season of Limitless being involved here. I do not see the gain for them to stay here, especially if they play second fiddle to whoever's the strongest EU team at the time. And Limitless, I don't know their original intentions for joining here, but I'm assuming it was to win and to have their flag displayed at a major and at Worlds, because that was
for very similar reasons to why Foot Esports is here.
Yeah, it was a guaranteed. Your logo would go on the side of a car in the game. That is, that was what was on offer. And now there is nothing. Absolutely nothing to gain other than the fact that you will be tweeted out when whoever goes to majors instead of you. So unless Limitless manages to turn their performances around, I don't think they're going to be called Limitless next season, and that's just me.
Okay, but my question was, is there an argument for them to bring in an EU player, have a 2/3 roster that can be capable of properly challenging Foot Esports, maybe get them cleared out next split, have a tiebreaker for Worlds, and with the potential of having 2 SSA players going to Worlds? And I will say, full disclosure here, I did DM Limitless about this and said, have you considered it? And they have zero interest in it. So it's not going to happen, but I thought there was at least an argument to be made about it.
There is an argument, but it's extremely optimistic.
But
I think
yeah.
no, I think that the only way we're going to get better as a region is if we incorporate foreign players on our teams. It's the only way the skills transfer is
Mm.
going to happen at a faster rate than what we can naturally generate organically. I think that is the only way that we will achieve a higher level of play is by having a foreign player or two on pretty
Mm.
much all of our teams. It's a nice thought to have a completely SSA based team taking us through to majors and things like that. But being realistic about this, I think the only way that we get better as a region is to completely accept the fact that this is now a global game.
Now, let me lead on from that because it does raise the question. Let's say the rules do evolve next season. And I go back and forth, and I've thought long and hard about this. Everyone's saying okay, we absolutely cannot go back to hard region lock like it used to be.
No, I would hate it.
That would be absolutely detrimental to us. Then the question is, should it be 1/3 or 2/3? My worry with a 2/3 rule is that are there going to be enough lone wolf EU players to go, oh yeah, let me go and give it a crack? Or should it be a 1/3 because then let's say 2/3 of foot esport, for example, Leoro and Torres decide to come here and pick up a local player. So I don't know if one would be better than the other. And as it stands now, I'm kind of lean more towards a 1/3 rule.
Shauna, if you've got any opinion on this, gun it. But
no, I'm good. I said much on the 1/3, 2/3 rule. At the end of the
Okay.
day,
but
something needs to change. Something has to change. We need to adapt to what's happening in front of us. We can't keep relying on whatever we had before because that's not working. Something has to change.
All right. Well, your thoughts on a 2/3, 1/3, and then we'll move on because Sean's point is valid. There's no point in milking this empty cow.
I feel, and this is my personal thought, is that if there is at least one player benefiting and growing experience from having two really good players on his team, that's enough for me because then skills transfer can take place. 1/3 is enough.
Okay. I'm down with that. So we remain hopeful that there will be some kind of evolution of the rules that will help us, but we assume the worst that is not going to be, and accept that that's the way it is, but accept and acknowledge also that we are in a. I loved your opening point, Bromeo. The Psionics, the publisher of this game, owes us nothing. They owe nobody anything. They could pull this game tomorrow if they so wished. That's unfortunately the way it is, and because of the physics of the game, apparently making a rebel version of Rocket League is not realistic. So it is what it is. We have an opportunity, more opportunity than any other title in the region. So let's grab it. Let's make the most of it and make the challenge of this. You know, the greater the pain, the more joyous the relief when the pain goes away, and as difficult. And Bromeo, you will attest to how hard this broadcast was this last weekend. You know, seeing a procession of SSA teams just getting hammered and tonged and losing. But you know what? I want to go through that pain because one day when it goes and we have SSA players achieving greatness, man, oh man, we shall weep with tears of joy. It will be wonderful.
Do you know what? Somebody famous or important or clever or somebody said, pain is the crucible of progress. And, you know, just to expand on that very deep metaphor, you are basically forged in the fires of your experiences. And I feel like what we experienced this weekend was a mind shift. I'm done making up excuses. I'm done thinking of reasons as to why, uh, you know, import players shouldn't be allowed here or anything like that. I say come. They must come in their droves, and they must come until we are good enough to coexist and then just be better and make it unattractive for them to be here. So the questions now are, how do we do that? how do we move forward? How do we get better? And there are no immediate answers. Next split's probably going to be the same. We're going to see a Monarch in chat, and it is the way it is. That's the only way that we will change, is if we get irritated enough by it. Somebody goes out and does something that is so drastic and so extreme that it changes the landscape of what we are currently experiencing. So yes, Greybeard, S Falcon, myself, we're all working on things that will take some time, and we can all use as much help and as many hands as possible. And this request goes out to anybody local, it goes out to anybody foreign. Help is help, no matter who hands it. And I think, this just to tie it all in, is that SSA can only get better if we accept what we have and accept what we don't have. And what we don't have is a big enough player base. So how do we grow it? And that is the challenge. Grow the player base, make sure that there's more players to play the game, make sure that we have more sweaties coming through, more ravies, more devours, more skill steals, more happy meals, so that it is a pure numbers game, that it becomes unattractive for a team
If
to
y'all
fly
don't follow
10,000
Greybeard,
kilometers
you need to
south
get in there.
to the tip of the African continent to play a video game.
And on that, so there are things afoot. And on the question of help, and Bromeo put out a tweet, and I put out a tweet about, we want to work on the grassroots and we need help. And we've had some great responses to that from people who do want to be part of it. And if we haven't gotten back to you, it's only because we don't know what to do with. We weren't expecting actually a bunch of people to say, yeah, get me in there, we want to help. So now we got to
coach.
Put me in, coach. Okay, where? So we're figuring that all out. But so we've actually started a database now of the orgs that want to participate in grassroots Rocket League and the people who want to get involved in things. And people have different skill sets. So if you want to be involved in SSA Rocket League in any capacity, from being, whether it's content creation, high school Rocket League, community Rocket League, events, our community league, if you want to be a match admin, if you want to be a caster, if you think you can help, or you don't even know what you want to do, but that you just want to help, reach out. Let's get you into the database. We are going to be leaning on you, and we are going to be tapping on you. So keep reaching out, please, either to myself in DMs or to the Bromeo or to Falcon. Just get in touch with us. We will take all the help we can get. Did we finish Skill Steel's question? Because we asked the first one. Wasn't there another part to the question?
It was the same thing. He mentioned bringing someone else in.
Oh, okay,
So we kind of answered it in one go.
Okay, good. Well, then I want to move to the LFT section. Friction alluded to this. There are the usual crumbling of rosters at the end of a split. So there are suddenly lots of opportunities. I thought we'd go through some of the tweets in that regard. And I think we need to go here. The first one we'll talk about, just because I know what it is, but I haven't. I actually just want to. Why is this cutting off? Anyway, maybe I'll just make it a tiny bit smaller. Okay, there we go. That's better. Eli has left Death Cloud Esports, which is very unfortunate. That was a roster I really wanted to see stick together, and he did say he's not LFT, and he's decided to sit out next split and kind of evaluate his options. But pretty unfortunate about that's happened, because I really like that roster. All right.
Wasn't he on we had him on the podcast. Didn't he mention he was possibly going to be staying with his team?
You know what? It's similar to the point that the throwaway comment of the Bromeos about Guns, who's been on multiple rosters, that has plagued Eli, and
everywhere.
Yeah. So, but it is what it is. So no Eli for the time being, and then Anilo is going to be LFT. Looking for one, looking for two under Astronic Esports for the second split in SSA. So that's the end of that roster, and I think there's a huge opportunity for a 1/3, 2/3 roster here to have an impact in the SSA scene. So I hope, and Yilo, you're having conversations with some of the SSA players, because there are a whole bunch of them suddenly available. So definitely have those conversations. Yes, someone took a breath like they were going to say something.
I was getting ready to, do a talk. I think Astronomic have struggled since the departure of Torres, and much to Foot's benefit, because I think Anilo and Torres played very well together. And you saw that in Anilo's, assists. He headed up assists for the entire of the last season. He was intense. So I think that they will be looking for a man up front to sink those shots. So I hope they find them, because they were very fun to watch when they were playing well. They haven't achieved, I'm assuming, what they wanted to. Hence, looking for another player or two. So yeah, I hope they give a shot to a local player. That would be great.
Slayer, thanks for the sub. All right, then T-Shao. So it looks like Pony no Jitsu has fallen apart, which is a little sad to see. T-Shao and Eagle both LFT. In my mind, we need someone like T-Shao and Willant, or T-Shao and Eagle, to pick up some goated French player. For me, that would be the play for those two, and I don't know if that's possible, but that would be great.
To me, has also been one of those that jumps
Yes.
teams all the time. So it's also
there's a guy that needs some guidance. The guy is clearly talented, got a lot to offer, but he's 14 years old. Someone needs a bit of a mentor. He needs a French skill steal. Exactly.
Yeah, he needs a skill steal.
He needs a skill steal to guide him along, which would be pretty good. And there's Eli's tweet, leaving Death Cloud. He's not sure, maybe taking a break for Split 2, so we'll see where that goes. And then Cosmico, there was a tweet from LDC. Yeah. Oh, here it is. No, it's not. Where's the tweet from LDC?
I posted it in your...
Oh, you did, but I'll just go to his. There we go. After some decent results last split, we're looking for the final piece to round out the puzzle. We're looking to build a team that wins chips. Okay. Or even cash. If you're a player that's motivated, ready to work hard and learn, DM me. SSA only. Oh, well, there's a line in the sand. There's a...
Yeah.
Oh, do you know what, though? In my tweet about Limitless maybe bringing on an EU player, Werty was quite vocal about that not. So I think he's quite firm on not having a mixed roster, which is fair enough, and that's his call. But yeah, I think they want to build local, and absolutely power to them.
Not much to add to that.
Fair enough. Now, the other, without dragging through all the tweets, the other players that I know are LFT are Nitro, T-Shao, and Eagle. Okay, we've gone over those already. I realized now my list was incomplete. I hadn't finished making it. On the good news front is that Highball are 100% sticking together for Split 2. And that, I messaged Skill Steel with some trepidation, but I was thrilled when he responded and said, no, we're 100% sticking together. So that's very cool. And then I don't know if there's any other major ones.
Guns is
Guns obviously is very much LFT, and I know there's tryouts going on. In fact, I think there might have been a tryout tonight. I don't know how that went, but that would be pretty good. And then if Nitro is LFT, I'm assuming that Tristan must be and that Douglas must be. I don't know what the situation there. I haven't seen any tweets or anything, but Nitro was on a team with them.
Or it could just mean that they're looking for a player, not a team.
True. That could be it. But Nitro did say open to EU players, so that's kind of interesting as well. And I do think that's a legitimate option. There are a number of benefits with doing that. If you're reaching out to the EU community, you're making connections, which are really important, not just in Rocket League, but in they say that travel broadens the mind, but if you can't travel, connect with people in other regions, other areas, other countries. There are huge benefits to it. You learn, and also, connections you make when you're young very often stay with you for the rest of your life, and there's great benefit in that. And I think that pretty much brings us to the end of the LFT section.
That's for now.
For now. No.
Only a day after.
Keep in mind that the next time on this podcast that we will be talking about RLCS is going to be, I think it's the 16th of April, 6 weeks from now. The signups will have closed by the time the podcast starts for the qualifiers starting that weekend. So a long way to go. Ooh. I just got a DM. Hey, I want to help the SSARL community. Let me know what I can do. Excellent. Keep those DMs rolling in. I love it. All right, gents. Well, I think all points are covered. Oh, VS Minor. Got to talk about. So VS Gaming they have a season that runs from February until August, and that all leads to our only LAN, which happens at Comic-Con, and God willing, there will be more LANs than just Comic-Con this year, but we'll see how that rolls out. But VS do have a LAN at Comic-Con. The top eight teams go to it, and they have 4 cups, 2 minors, and 1 major. All of those have points attached to them, and the top 8 teams that collect the most points will go. Their first minor is going to be next weekend. The signups for that close on Wednesday in 2 days' time, and currently there are 10 teams signed up. We must do better. So go and sign up for the VS Gaming minor, which is next weekend. And then that brings us to birthdays. We've already wished the Bromeo well and a happy birthday, but we might as well do it one more time. Today is the Bromeo's birthday. Happy birthday.
He's old.
Yeah, I know. I'm old now. I'm graveyard in training. Everybody knows this.
And Yilo, sadly, imports are not allowed in VS, and not because they don't necessarily want imports. It's more of an admin thing, trying to pay people who play and then coming out to LAN, and it's too much of an admin ball ache for them. So that was limited to SSA. And then where's all my birthdays? Hold on 1 second.
Oh no.
Only the Bromeo's birthday.
No, and there's not that much exciting. There's only, the only other birthday that's SSA related is the Peach. Now, the Peach doesn't do a lot in Rocket League. He's done some broadcasting, works for ACGL. He was the broadcaster at the last Comic-Con LAN for VS Gaming, and on the 26th of February, he turned 22. So, to the Peach, happy birthday to you. And gents, that does bring us to the end. I think this has been one of our... No, I'm going to go ahead and say it. This has been the most lively podcast we've had. I think it's the closest we've all come to speaking our truth, which, Bromeo, not a bad thing.
No, not the worst at all. Sometimes you need to speak some bullshit to all the bullshit things. And sometimes that's bullshit.
Well, we've got to let our opinions out as well at the end of the day. We can't keep trying to sugarcoat things. Sometimes a hard truth has to come out.
Yeah, look, my only worry right now is what Twitter's going to look like afterwards, because I said some shit and now I've got to deal with it.
Yeah, but you know what? I have found the locals to not be overly animated on Twitter when they're not talking shit about each other.
That's fair enough.
I have a feeling we will be spared some of the heat.
We still have so much work to do as a region, and we're really cooking up some really cool shit right now. And like we've mentioned a couple of times, if you want to get involved, even if you don't think that you have any applicable skill, sometimes even enthusiasm is enough.
All right. All points very well made, gentlemen. Thank you all very much for being here. As always, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you from me, the Bromeo, and Falcon. Peace. We're out.